So, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Mr. Ganpati Raman, BP GM Airshare Advisory Group India, myself Rajkumar Paira, Study Manager and Senior Analyst Airshare Advisory Group India, welcome all the delegates to our 6th edition of DTC Asia webinar. The topic of the webinar is creating business impact with industrial IoT. Next. Agenda for the day. Duration of the agenda webinar is 60 minutes. We have our colleague Mr. Bob Gill, General Manager Southeast Asia, Airshare Advisory Group, based out of Singapore, will be giving a brief introduction on today's webinar topic. We have our guest speaker, Mr. Atul Gavil, Chief Transformation Officer, India Glycols, will be sharing his experience on today's topic. After the presentation, we'll have panel discussion between Mr. Bob Gill and Mr. Atul Gavil, followed up by audience Q&A. Next. Q&A with delegates. Then Digital Transformation Council, which is an ARC advisory group initiative to connect, collaborate, learn, and share with peers who are digitizing and transforming their organizations. DTC is an end users only community. Some of the benefits of being a member of this community are interact with a peer community of users. They can get free access to all the council libraries, interact with ARC analysts. Also, all DTC members will also be able to view the forum archive for 3 months. Next. Now, I request Mr. Bob to take this forward.
All right, thank you very much, Rajkumar. And looking forward to this 6th DTC Asia event. And it's all about creating business impact with industrial IoT. So in fact, I was thinking back to the first time I made a presentation on industrial IoT. And that was at an oil and gas event in Singapore towards the end of 2015. And my presentation was titled The New Era of Industrial IoT. My slot was actually in one of the last sessions towards 5 o'clock. And as I met people at the conference during the day, quite a few asked me what would I be presenting on. So I replied, industrial IoT. And many of them said, industrial what? IoT, what is that? So back then, just over 5 years ago, this topic was obviously new to many of the delegates at that conference. And after my presentation, I had quite a number of people coming up to me, asking me for information. And obviously they were intrigued by this then relatively new concept of industrial IoT. So fast forward to 2021, and of course, I no longer have to explain what industrial IoT is all about. This combination of sensors, local processing, now known commonly as edge computing, and network communications to send data over the internet to a software application, now usually hosted in the cloud. So that's the basic technology setup. But people are still very keen to understand how their peers, how other industrial companies are using IoT to deliver improvements in operational and asset performance, to develop new connected products, and to innovate new business models, which are often based around enhanced service offerings. And over the last few years, I've talked to an increasing number of companies that are successfully adopting industrial IoT. For example, here in Singapore, a petrochemical company that has replaced manual inspection of steam traps by an IoT system based on using acoustic sensors from Emerson. And these sensors listen for steam leakage from these steam traps. And they transmit the data back over the internet for analysis and reporting. So the considerable financial savings, they come from reduced energy consumption through what is rapid identification of failing steam traps and their consequent timely replacement. In fact, the same company is working with another technology supplier, this time ABB, to monitor hundreds of motors in its plant. So this time a wireless sensor attached to a motor or maybe a pump is used to detect adverse vibration, which is indicative of a looming problem. And quick action can ensure the process is not interrupted by a motor failing on critical rotating equipment. And just last December, it was reported that this project has exceeded all expectations, with no motor breakdowns recorded over the last 2 years since the technology was deployed. And again, I think the financial savings there from zero downtime on motors will be quite apparent. In an example of new business model development through IoT, there's one manufacturer I know of, they produce thermal industrial dryers and ovens. And that's an example of a company that's using the technology to stay connected to its assets once out in the field at customer sites. So now all its equipment is sold with onboard connectivity to enable remote service capability, which is then monetized via tiered service subscriptions. So this new, if I can call it, this new digital relationship moves the OEM from being a pure asset provider of equipment to an ongoing consultant. And as a result, equipment problems are solved much faster through the company's process experts ready access to and analysis of the machine data that can be accessed from out in the field. So just a few examples of many of the kind of business impact that's being realized through industrial Internet of Things. And right now, to hear more on this topic and to learn more about this topic, I'm really delighted to welcome our special guest speaker for this month's DTC Asia event. And he's Atul Govil, Chief Transformation Officer and Head SAP and IT at India Glycols. So Atul, a very warm welcome to you for this month's Digital Transformation Council meeting. And it's over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, Atul. I'll share your presentation.
Great. Sure, please go ahead. Yeah. I think while you share the presentation, I think a great afternoon here in India, I would say. And my name is Atul Govil, and as Bob mentioned, I work for India Glycols as the lead for business transformation and also for technology. I sincerely thank ARC team for having me here, and also the participants who have joined in to hear the perspectives of IoT from a practitioner's viewpoint, and particularly from a manufacturing standpoint, I would say. Before I begin, I wish and hope that all of you and your near dear ones are safe and healthy, and are taking due precautions to safeguard yourself from this unprecedented pandemic, so to say. That said, moving on to the presentation. So my as Bob mentioned, so I think things like the topic of IoT, as he mentioned, was a relatively lesser known term in 2015-16, and even in the last couple of years, and even today, not every entity has started working on these topics. Some of them still think that this is a technology for the future, not maybe because of their experience and the way they have been conducting their operations in the last several years, decades. So change is a difficult thing, and unless people see and are able to relate that what value it can bring to us, it's very difficult to make a switch. So As a company, India Glycols, I work for, it's a diversified multi-location enterprise, and we have almost around 5,800 crores of Indian rupees of annual revenue. And our products include bulk and specialty chemicals. We are into industrial gases. We make medical oxygen. We make hand sanitizers, guar gum. We are into pharma as well, and also we have a liquor segment. So we are a fairly diversified group, and the context of today's discussion and the topic which we see is about creating a business impact with IoT. Why I would like to talk about this topic is that what matters to business is not the jargon, okay, but the results. So that's the core theme, because nobody is interested that you do IoT, you do AI, or you do ML. What results it finally drives is of consequence, is of relevance to business. So having said that, I just want to also highlight that when you talk about IoT, generally, though many enterprises would be in different levels of maturity on adoption of IoT, as I said, and but in the most evolved ones also, I still find, because we connect with other business leaders as well, we find that the focus still remains on driving better operational efficiencies, getting more cost optimization, and of course to link those islands of automation that an organization would have. Maybe you'll have some control system for some plant, some other control systems, some storage areas, or some areas which are not enabled through a proper DCS or a PLC or a control system. Therein you add additional sensors so that you have the complete value stream illuminated with context. Of course, you can't just be adding sensors for nothing. Of course, you will have to create a context that what is the value stream, and then you find out what are the dark spots which are not sensorized as yet, and those you identify, and then you basically take a call that based on the cost benefits to sensorize them, and then use them for taking decisions based on data. So I think, and before I start to and go on to the next slide, what I would like to highlight is that IoT, if you, as most would know, is a confluence of IT and OT. But I would just also like to highlight that it doesn't stop there. IT and OT is still technology. What is most importance and most relevance is to be able to add, and you have to add, the business domain expertise to contextualize it. Otherwise, it just remains another piece of technology. So that's the thing, IT, OT confluence. And myself, in my career, I've been lucky that I have seen all these three themes, and I've had the privilege of working in the IT domain and the OT domain, and also driving business transformation initiatives. So that's what I bring to the table. Moving on, I think you can switch over to the next slide, please. Yeah, correct. So I think the agenda, as mentioned, is about we'll cover these four topics. Brief about the connected factory. We'll talk about the project approach which we have taken internally. We'll talk about two case studies which we did, one for predictive maintenance use cases and one for the connected factory use case. So before I highlight this, I just want to highlight that any project, if you were to start, okay, you have to start with a small pilot. I would hesitate, or I would not use the word proof of concept. I would say start with a smart pilot in areas wherein you realize that a failure would not result in a catastrophe. This could be a utilities plant or a standalone batch plant, wherein even if you get some initial setbacks or pushbacks, you can still orient the team, counsel the team, and also the leadership to remain focused on the goals. And then, having done some good pilots, you can share the examples made and also the possibilities it entails to other sections of the enterprise. So doing pilots, trials, and then relaying it across other sections of the enterprise is the core fundamental. Otherwise, these would just remain on PowerPoints. So that's the broad theme. And as I also mentioned that no, while you choose a project, no, you will have to prioritize based on the business impact. It could be either the bottom line, it could be losses minimization, improving yields, reducing energy consumption, as Bob mentioned, by way of like the steam trap example which he mentioned, or it could be for those high energy consuming motors or equipments, and optimizing it so that no, you are able to reduce the specific energy consumption for that matter. Or on the other hand, it could be addressing the top lines. When I say the top line of an enterprise would be if you can get higher throughputs from the same assets, so you are able to sweat the assets more, you get an improved throughput, you get first time right, so that you get lesser rejections, lesser rework, and then of course lower downtime, so that you increase equipment availability to be able to produce more. And whilst you do all this, I would suggest that for such projects, it's always important that you have somebody from finance and accounts as a partner to validate the numbers which you achieve, so that these becomes realistic and relatable. So this and with real numbers, with tangible outcomes, the leadership interest remains, and you have then you can have their ears and eyes always charged, and they are willing to hear and take next steps. So and I just want to highlight that for a smart energy or a smart connected factory initiative, as we are talking about, what we need to have is a focused eye on the ROI. And also in this pandemic times, what we have learned is that remote working, safe operations on account of the reduced strength on the shop floor is another area which is coming up. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Yeah, you can just click once again. Yeah, okay, fine. So here the focus, what I wanted to highlight is that there are these three themes when you talk about a manufacturing entity. So you start with design, you design setup, you design a plant, a unit, then you operate it, and while you operate, you will have maintenance issues, you will have downtimes. So you focus on these things. So when we talk about IoT, all these three themes from a design standpoint, as also Bob mentioned a while back, we can think about creating connected products. If you are kind of an OEM, suppose you make compressors or you make pumps, you make motors, so you make some automobile like Tesla does. So it's like a connected product wherein even post sales you are able to keep a track on its usage and be able to advise the user that this is not being done optimally, or what's the best way of doing it, and also monetize it in some shape and form. So that's from a design perspective. But as I also mentioned that currently those entities which are not having such kind of a need to have a connected product, so to say, they are focusing on the operate and maintain themes. And when we talk about operate could be as I have mentioned, you enable remote operations, you look at how do you optimize on the yields, how do you optimize on throughputs, and also be able to do all of this under the ambit of environment, health and safety norms which are required, and for the company to be compliant, and with due quality. Quality is another a very tricky term, because we think that we have to give the best quality. I would rather take a different view. It's not about giving the best quality. It's all because if you try to aim and give something which is not required, so it's like a quality giveaway. So you have to optimize that. What is the market expectation of the quality? It could be a chemical, petrochemical, or any other product, or a pharma product. and accordingly you'll have to make sure that no, you do not end up over provisioning, and of course you cannot have poor quality which will get into rejections. So that's the broad theme I just want to highlight. However, while we do all of this, what we get out of IoT is a real-time data which is transparent, and you can then convert it into actionable insights, which can be done to an extent autonomously, or it could be evaluated by humans. And then having got that data, the next action point is you need to analyze it and represent it in a manner so that the right stakeholders or those who are viewing it can actually act on it at the right time, so that no, it shouldn't be a shift end or a day end or a month end reporting like most companies continue to do. You have this shift end reporting. By the time there is you have already lost those 8 hours, and then there is little much you can do to undo the losses. Herein what you get is it's like an on-time real-time thing, which is data updates you are getting, and based on those defined KPIs you can take a call what needs intervention and by whom. So I think that's the brief. Can you move on to the next slide, please? Yeah. Okay, fine. So this is this is an important point, which I would like to highlight, the prioritize initiatives, because you will have to figure out that which levers do you think are most relevant. And when I say levers, it could be so any outcome which we are targeting, that if we are trying to target that I need to, if variance in batch cycle time is an issue with the enterprise, that for the same product you see a lot of variance in the batch cycle time, or you find out that there is a lot of discrepancy in the yields, in the sense that suppose with 3 inputs you should get 3 inputs of a defined quantity, you should get some Y quantity of output, but you find that with across multiple batches there is a lot of variance in the yield numbers. So say it should ideally be 97%, but you find that sometimes it is 93, sometimes it is 98. So once you have identified that what is the problem statement you are trying to address through the IoT project, when I say outcome, you need to know why we are doing and what outcomes are we aiming. So depending upon those, you define that which are those KPIs you want to monitor. Okay, what section of the operations you need to put a manual or a spotlight on, that these are the areas I need to work on initially, and then you can scale it out across multiple other areas and other possible initiatives. But then you will have to start somewhere. So as I said, the starting point has to be based on some historical data, identifying that what could be the best problem statement. If you go out and ask your operations what is the problem, they would say everything is great, we do not have any problem. But then how do you get to arrive at those problems is to look at the historical data, look at batch cycle times, look at the yield values, and look at safety lapses or gaps which you have seen, any near misses you have seen, or you can look at the rework, how much rework happens, and accordingly you can charter that this is what along with operations, along with maintenance, you will have to do that. Can you move on to the next slide, please? Yeah. On this one, I think the core focus is to as I said, you'll have to convince the key stakeholders that why it makes business sense, and then of course, as I said, prioritize on the initiatives, build the right team, identify what skills and knowledge is required, and then build with the team. You need to you create those change agents who will be able to then further populate the understanding to the larger enterprise, so that this becomes a sustainable thing and a sustainable project. So that's the broad theme. Can you move on to the next one? I'll just move quickly so that no, we also cover the case studies. So herein, no, I've talked about these right levers. No, you talk about the team, technology, connectivity, analytics. I think team is important so that no, to build or create an orchestra. As I keep telling, you need a team of expert players. No, somebody who can play the guitar, somebody who can play this. I'm giving you an example. And in an organization parlance, no, it's the team which will help identify the most impactful processes, the most impactful areas, and then be able to advise on changes uh, to upgrade our the whole hardwired setup or legacy processes which we have to be able to achieve more efficient processes. And then, of course, while we do so, to percolate changes and methods across users to drive a sustainable change. So that's from a team standpoint. From a technology and data standpoint, I think it is of value only know if it is accurate and it's complete and timely. And in case any of these three aspects is missing, if it is not accurate enough, the data which you pick or gather, or if it is not complete enough or it's not timely enough, then data loses value. It's like, I give you an example, like you get newspapers every day. Okay, maybe because of COVID situation, people have stopped taking newspapers. But otherwise, if you were to relate it to a newspaper, if somebody gives me a newspaper a week back or a day before, it doesn't hold any value. So I would need something which is current. I need it now. Okay, what's relevant today. So that's the context from that standpoint. And then from a connectivity standpoint, no, you'll have to identify whether if it's a brownfield project which is for a already existing unit. So you'll have to figure out whether it needs some kind of retrofitting. You need to install some cost-effective sensors. You need to do some data multiplication, and then of course factor the IoT gateway hardware. Whereas for a greenfield application, you can talk about those integrated in the machine itself. So you can have many of these sensors and communication capabilities. And then finally, analytics, which we have spoken about already to an extent, and we'll cover on the case study. But analytics, I think I would like to highlight that no, it ultimately helps you be able to facilitate fast and fact-based decisions, and then enable to drive the outcomes much faster. And also what happens is, with analytics, you can make those workflows, those processes more responsive and proactive, so to say. So and these processes could be around avoiding operational downtime, or minimizing losses, or reducing scrap generation, and address any other production challenges. So I think this is what is largely there. Can you move on to the next slide, please? So okay, so on this one, this is an interesting and a very important topic which we miss out when we talk about these IoT and kind of projects, which are very different than a networking project or on an ERP project. Herein, it's of extreme consequence that we choose the right team. When you talk about leadership team, if I start from the very top, you need to set the right expectation and sync up on the outcomes, okay, and be able to provide guidance and also seek inputs from them on a need basis, and maybe engage in some kind of steering committee interactions wherein you deliberate on the recommendations. So that's how, like in our case, when we did one business transformation project, we created a complete architecture on that, who would participate in steering committees, what will be the theme, what are the areas we will cover. And then of course the project management, wherein you talk about the plan, the timelines, the periodic reviews, and to look at whether deliverables are getting met in due course of time. Engage with the respective heads of departments and subject matter experts on a need basis, and also periodically. It's not just need basis, periodically, so that people across these cross-functional team, they align on the right KPIs, and then you conduct maybe workshops, you conduct training sessions to build capabilities and awareness on the new ways of working. So that's the broad theme. And then of course the reporting structure will change the whole routine of working while we initiate these IoT projects, because much of the data which was earlier collated manually will start flowing to user systems directly. So and then of course you will have to address any fears. People may have fears that what will they do if all of this it starts happening automatically. Then you can think of how do you actually drive improvements using those data points. And then important is the works team, people who are on the shop floor, because they are the ones who would provide the domain expertise and the ground level understanding and context to the tech team, and also the senior team members, and be able to understand the operational nuances, because sometimes everything looks good on PPT or on a laptop or a desktop, but then how are things happening at the shop floor or at the plant level, equipment level, so that you get a good handholding and good inputs on what is the real problem, so that you do not solve something which is the problem itself is non-existent or of the least consequence. So it's always important that you dig deep and have this nice collaboration with the works team. And then of course the same works team will help you test the outcomes and identify more use cases as the initial ones see success. And then of course while the testing happens, it's not just about from the functionality standpoint, it's also about from a cyber security, identity and access management standpoint also. So I think that's the brief context. Last but not the least, I just want to highlight is about the external consulting implementation support team, because these projects, sometimes you need to uh, have some kind of an external input, because to understand the art of the possible, and you can identify which areas you need work support on, so that you don't have to do a blue sky thinking, so to say, and start something, reinvent the whole thing, reinventing the wheel, so to say. So that's is the value which the external good consultants bring in. However, a word of caution here that since many of these large enterprises I have engaged with, because they do not have a right confluence or right mix of these IT, OT, and domain teams, sometimes you are left wanting that whether these guys will be able to solve your issues or not. So it could be a combination of either a startup and a well-known management consultant who is also offering these digital transformation initiatives. But then, as I said, it is important that we engage with one or the other entity. While I would before I move on to the next slide, I just want to highlight that while you create an internal team, be very cautious that you need to build redundancies internally, because these new age skills are extremely in high demand. So you will have to create redundancies in the team, that if you lose one team member who has learned the way out and understood the way things work, even if that person chooses to leave for better prospects, you at least have some level of cover available within your internal team to take care of the initiatives. Let's move on to the next slide. I think I'll come on to the case study which talks about the predictive maintenance aspect. Herein, what's of importance is that maintenance is, as I talked about, those three pillars: design, operate, and maintain. So this comes under the maintenance aspect, wherein any equipment which is installed on day one and it starts its operation, it would need some periodic preventive maintenance, which to ensure that it's up and running and you can avoid downtime. And just to give you a context, that I did a study that manufacturing companies typically lose $50 billion a year in unplanned downtime, and that's a huge number, I would say. And this is all reported. Many of these downtimes figures do not actually come out in the public domain, but this is just a broad view which will give you the whole perspective that why maintenance is an important aspect. And then what also happens is that because you do not have too many experts available on the shop floor, considering especially these pandemic times, you do not have all the experts available at all the time on the shop floor because of absenteeism, because of social distancing norms. So therein, and then the focus is actually to run the plant maybe at sometimes little suboptimally as well. But that could also result in some operational issues, or maybe whatever preventive aspects need to be taken care of, like you need to do a vibration check, you need to do a oil level check, or whatever, temperature check. So all that also sometimes, because if everything is done manually, then you may choose, there may be situations wherein you may not be able to do that all the time. So with technology like IoT, you'd be able to do this, because you can then start getting alerts that the temperature is not right, the bearing temperature is incorrect, or the motor current winding is in one of the phases is high, or there is an unbalanced voltage, unbalance in current, and all of these point to one or the other problem. So with a combination of these data points, you can then narrow down that what is likely to happen, and then you can plan your course of action. I think this is a brief I just wanted to highlight. And then I just also, before I move on, last but not the least, on this point of maintenance is that many a times we find that companies are hard pressed that they would not like to allocate money on maintenance aspects. So they would say that you please manage with something, you arrange some spare, or you try to continue without the right spare. But then that can bring down the whole machine. But then if you have some of these technologies which can tell and give a pattern that yes, there is an abnormality which is happening and it points to a possible failure, then it becomes more you are in a better position to engage with the head of operations or the finance guy that look, these data points point that if this continues, this could lead to a catastrophe or a failure. So we rather take a call. So this is what I just wanted to highlight. Can you move on to the next slide, please? Herein, I've just shared a PM, a traditional preventive maintenance practice wherein you select equipment, you identify the historical data, you look at the OEM, original equipment manufacturer inputs, and then define the task list, the intervals, and arrange spares. And then while you use the asset, you keep getting those PM notifications either in SAP or in some other shape and form. And then, of course, you perform the PM, and the whole cycle goes over and over till the life cycle of the equipment. So I've just shared this as a context because not everybody would have that maintenance view. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So herein, this is This is what technologies like IoT enable. That you identify that what are those KPIs. Once you've identified those problematic equipments or equipments which you want to enable through IoT. Once you narrow down on those, then you narrow down on the critical parameters which you want for condition monitoring on an ongoing basis. Then you can define those thresholds that for these parameters, what are those thresholds, what are the who all based on, if the threshold is breached, then who all should get an alert. And then having done that, then based on those, you can enable and perform maintenance and advise the operations that since this threshold is already hit, so we rather take maintenance before this goes into a failure mode. So this is just a brief about the predictive maintenance practice, and there may be questions you may have which we will take it up in the Q&A section, but just wanted to highlight the perspective. Let's move on to the next slide. In the interest of time, maybe we can, yeah. So this is what for one of the use cases wherein we using the smart energy and power monitoring sensors. What we did is we actually illuminated, so to say, and sensorized these LT motors, HT motors, transformers, and also the grid power, DG sets, turbines, substations, and through Modbus as connectivity, as a connected, as the connectivity protocol. What we did is we captured data sets including power factors, as I said, current imbalance, voltage imbalance, wattage, of course, which wattage was for largely for identifying the overall energy consumption versus generation, any losses in terms of, suppose the overall energy generated and the grid power is say 40 megawatt. I'm giving an example, and the consumption total was coming out to be say 38 megawatt. So if there was a deficit, there was a gap of 2 megawatt, then identifying where is this happening, what is where is it, because of the distribution loss, transmission loss, or maybe eddy current losses in the transformers, where is the losses happening. So to be able to identify all that, and then of course to look at specific energy consumptions across different consumers. It could be for a particular plant or a particular motor, that if a pump is designed to uh, pump so much of liquid or fluid at this pressure, then and the entire plant has to produce this much quantity of finished goods, then as per the design it should consume so much megawatts. Against that, what is the actual megawatt consumed? So you look at specific energy consumption parameters as well, to be able to see that what all and where all we can optimize, and maybe you could figure out that there is a problem in that equipment itself. It could be the driven equipment or the driver equipment. Driven could be the pump or the agitator or a cooling fan, any equipment which is driven, and or there could be a problem with the maybe the cooling section or the bearing of the motor is not right, or the coupling itself there is a problem, or maybe there is some problem in the winding itself, or the electrical connections. So all of that gets highlighted, illuminated using this kind of studies. Let's move on to the next one. What we actually get is drive real outcomes, as I said, from a left side, wherein you talk about there is significant part of the on the left side. You can see much of the time the equipment is not available because of unplanned downtime. But if you move on, if you were able to sensorize it and be able to analyze data correctly and relay it to the right team for the right actions, the right time, you optimize and reduce those unplanned downtimes, and then the equipment is far it's available for a far higher period, which we call it MTBF, mean time between failure, is considerably increased. And when you plan things much better than even the MTTR, the mean time to repair also goes down, because you are well planned. You now see a pattern that if this is the situation, then this could fail at this stage. So then you can plan your spares management also can get far more optimized, rather than just doing it on a preventive state. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, so herein, I just have mentioned that when you talk about such a project, you have to look at the software or the application which we chose. For this one, we implemented it on the cloud, and then the license charges, implementation charges, and the whole connectivity part, which was the networking and servers, if required, for some edge computing work. And then, of course, the sensors, meters, cabling, and whatever is required for security, secure access. And then, of course, any skills or reskilling, upskilling requirements which are required. And then, what exactly how do you place this? Because these sensors, you'll have to think through how do you place them, because not everything, not each of those legacy equipments are compatible with the latest and the greatest technology tools available today. So you'll have to factor that as well, that know what workarounds you need to look at so that you are able to get these sensors provision, and you are able to complete the sensorization, so to say, across the entire required landscape. So this broadly covers the smart metering and the smart energy and the electrical parameters and other parameters monitoring, to be able to look at the from an energy standpoint, but also start looking at it from a maintenance standpoint. So that's the broad overview. Let's move on to another case study which I wanted to highlight here. Is, can you move on to the next slide, please? Yeah, so this is an interesting connected factory use case which I would like to highlight. And herein, no, I may not be able to spell out everything, but on the left, if you see, what I've shown is these PLC, DCS, and other SCADA systems. And these are, we connected almost 14 odd different plants were connected, and each of these systems on the left were from different suppliers, from Yokogawa, Emerson, Rockwell, Siemens. So the whole, I would say, it covers almost every brand of control systems which we chose. So this is just a simplistic build-up of the end-to-end data architecture which we use for our connected plant platform. And the availability for project preparation activities included, what we factored is the switches setup, the VLAN setups at the DCS PLC locations and other control systems, the entire network setups, the firewall setups with due configuration, and of course then the central data logger setup for OPC and for the Splunk platform installation. This entire project we chose to do it on-prem. There were reasons we could have very well deployed Splunk on the cloud, as is mentioned, but we chose finally to do it on-prem. But using that across these production areas and our different boilers, different turbines, across these 14 plus units, different units, we created a complete a unified view of the whole stream. And then what we did is we filtered on what tags, what parameters of interest from each of these control systems was of relevance or importance. We chose pick that, and then right from the OPC server configuration and the Splunk server configuration, indexer setup in Splunk, then pushing data to Splunk from the OPC layer and the platform, and of course the XML dashboard development on Splunk. So all of that was completed, and then importantly what we did is the KPI logic, the KPIs which we chose to depict on these dashboards using widgets was finalized unit wise across different plants and utilities, and with a sign off, of course. And while we did the sign off, it was not that it was cast in stone that this is what remains, because this is like a journey. This will never, you can't say that you have evolved, you have arrived. It's always about first you highlight and identify those top priority ones, then you define, once you've been able to address them, then you look at the second set of priorities. But then that's how we did in this complete integrated system which we create. Let's move on to the last but one, I think the second last slide was, let's you can move on. Yeah, so herein what, it's a slightly busy slide, I would say, but I've just mentioned this so that we all can take home some key pointers that what we need to factor that. So first of all, what's important is that while you drive such projects, one needs to remember that innovation and productivity related, it's more than a task. Okay, it's not a one point thing that you do this. It's like a journey. So you need to have your processes to constantly evolve. And then and the IoT platform which you choose and the entire setup ecosystem which you choose should provide that ability to be to adopt and be flexible when you need to change some machines, you need to make some changes in the equipment, the running operation parameters may change, the metrics may change, and the entire some of the section of the process also may change. So from that standpoint, it is important to have that view. And one important aspect is that when we all talk about productivity improvement and all that, but it doesn't come just like that. No, it's productivity. If you want to drive productivity excellence as a team, so you need to look at management of the change. You need to look at how do you be constantly creative, and of course using the right technology. And it's also about making sure that you are able to push people, not saying literally push people, but getting people out of their comfort zone, and maybe you need to augment their capabilities and explain the possibilities with these current age technologies. It's not easy, but certainly it's certainly needed, I would say, to remain relevant in next couple of years, because companies, you can well relate, the company like Tesla, which wasn't existent maybe a decade back, is now its market cap is actually far more than all of these automobile giants, which have been there for ages. Put together, their revenue is still lesser than Tesla alone. So you can well imagine the 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 value these technologies and the possibilities uh, these innovation themes can entail. And I also want to highlight that with emergence of IoT, industrial IoT particularly, I see a pattern that these many of these MES platforms and related applications are getting sunset. Okay, and now companies are actually using it for not just for production operations generally, but also for inventory management, wherein you can have a real-time view of what is the inventory you are carrying, and based on that you can create alerts, you can have a replenishment planning based on those real inventory data points. And of course, this is whatever I have spoken till so far is within the boundaries of the plant. But then if you were to have a connected supply chain, which can talk about what is the stock in transit, you can link it up with SAPs of the world, any ERPs, to be able to contextualize with the business data sets, so that you know what has been ordered, what is in transit, and what is in stock, and be able to then be more I would say you can use those just-in-time. The just-in-time doesn't it's not just about being used in automobiles. You can use those principles as well out here. So this is broad view I just wanted to highlight, and of course, as I have mentioned, you have to look at areas around how do you connect to these disparate systems, and because they may not have the common protocol. Look at latency issues, because there could be certain parameters which need to be refreshed on this platform at a far higher frequency than some other parameters. Typically, parameters like flow, parameters like pressure, they are fast changing. Vibration is a very dynamic data. Okay, but then possible these parameters like temperature, they are far, they take a while. It's not as likewise level changes also, unless there's an exception. So those are slow changing parameters. So identifying that the need that at what frequency the data refresh has to happen on these IoT platforms, and what do you want to do with it, what decision you want to take out of it. Based on that, you need to take a call. And I think that's the broad view. And of course, there may be a need that there are some data points and controls which you want to build in. Then maybe you might choose to put put an edge computing setup which runs near the source of the generated data, and wherein you deploy data applications and some processes near the source of the generated data itself. So that's a broad theme I want to touch upon. I have maybe a slide, one slide more maybe. Can you move on to the, yeah. So this is before we choose, when we talk about obsolescence in technology, we all agree that there is a far higher rate of obsolescence in the IT and of course the OT field as well. But then it's all about, we need to first refresh ourselves. We need to first familiarize, acquaint ourselves with these new age technologies. Current age, I would say. I will refrain calling it new age, because then you may think that this will still be, you have many years. I think it's about now and here. And understanding these requirements, understanding and then be able to articulate and explain to the top leadership that what it can potentially do, showcase with some pilots that this is what is possible, engage with some partners, external partners, so that they can explain to you, to your team, to your leadership team, if required, on what these technologies has done for similar companies elsewhere, whether in your country or otherwise. It doesn't really matter, because you can get anything anywhere. In fact, I can tell you, I'm part of many of these programs of NASSCOM. I find there's far too many of these startups which have come up in India, and they're quite promising, and they're doing some promising work out here. So this is broadly, I just wanted to highlight, and I think before I conclude, I would go to the last slide. Request you to go to the last slide, please. So this is I just wanted to highlight, it's about transform before its time out, and I just want to highlight before we get into the Q&A is that the IoT earlier was as Bob mentioned, it was initially a hype, or it was another jargon, I would say, but now it's giving way to real world IoT implementations, and we have actually gone much and well past from the POC stage, and the time for IoT is now. Prices of platforms, technology, sensors have gone down, and the options available are going up, and the time is ripe and right, and I wish you all the success for your initiatives. I think, Bob, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Atul, for that fascinating presentation, insights into what India Glycols is doing. If I can, we don't have too long left, but if I can I just take you back to something you said at the beginning of your presentation? And you said that for many companies, they think that IoT is something still far in the future. So what was it that made India Glycols, if you like, a relatively early adopter of IoT? What was the trigger factor for you?
So what we actually did is, starting 2014-15, we had engaged with some of these leading consulting organizations, wherein we started to look at our processes and look at areas to drive profitability within the enterprise. So it was first, we looked at areas which we could do without usage of any new technology, so to say. That's what we started. Having done that, having extracted juice from those initiatives, then we also started looking at different processes. While we did a very detailed process review across the value stream, we therein identified that there were certain areas which actually could be automated, and that's how we then narrowed down that let's do this and illuminate these processes digitally, so that we make far better decisions and far faster decisions, and be more resilient to the changes happening outside.
Okay. You also touched on resources and building the team for IoT. So what was the existing level of IoT knowledge within the company when you started the initiative? And then how did you go about developing the skills that you needed for it to be successful?
I think what we did is, as I said, no, because I have also worked in the OT framework and also in the business transformation. So I had that comfort of understanding of that. That understanding was there. I would not say that I knew it all on day one. I also learned and evolved, as I said. But what we did is we created a cross-functional team which brought in the right skills on the OT standpoint, from an operations and maintenance standpoint, and then from the IT standpoint. And since I had that visibility across these domains broadly, so we could stitch the whole thing together. And of course, we engaged with a third-party consultant also, so that from a platform deployment, sensorization, and the interconnect standpoint, identifying those right protocols which could cut across multiple of these OEMs offerings. So that part we did, and it was like we created a sweet spot, so to say, to be able to drive this initiative seamlessly.
Right. Okay. And something else you mentioned, Atul, was having a finance and accounts person on the team. So presumably that made it perhaps a little bit easier to financially justify the project and go and get the required funding. Is that right?
So actually, yeah, I think it always makes sense, because as I said, no, the leadership, they are not actually, they do not want to just get into jargons and they don't want to just hear that, no, this is the art of the possible. They want to see these real possibilities and the real outcomes which are coming progressively, so that it keeps them interested, and then it's easier to go back to them and say that, no, now that we have been able to do this, let's do this as well. So it brings a lot of confidence, trust, and credence to the whole problem statement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And presumably, I mean, you talked about some of the successes of the projects, but I would guess there were also some challenges along the way. What were like one or two of the challenges you think you faced during the initiative?
Yeah, I think there were multiple, as I said, because of the whole, because some of these plants had legacy systems, so getting the data out of those systems and being able to have them interoperable with the whole platform was not easy. And the other part was from a cybersecurity standpoint, that also thinking through that, know how to make it, because it's a running thing or it's a running plant, so we had to make sure that security was stitched right at the very beginning, not as an afterthought, not as a patchwork. So that was another area which was of concern and focus for all of us. And then, of course, the other one was the adoption, that we had to make sure that it doesn't just remain a tech project. So, but then I think I would say that though we saw good adoption, but fortunately, unfortunately, during the COVID times, this had seen massive usage, massive usage.
Okay, that's interesting. So perhaps you could just tell us about where you are now and what are your future plans when it comes to IoT and the connected factory. What's going to happen in the next in the short term?
I think, as I said, this is something which we have done it for one of our petrochemical plant right now. So right as we speak, we are setting up something similar for one of our liquor setup, a large liquor setup which we have. We are setting up. We are creating a completely man machine. And in this setup we are also adding the human manpower movement as well, so that we have to make sure that the people movement is also tracked, not just for tracking what they are doing, but also to make sure that people should move around places where where they are supposed to, rather than create a safety hazard for themselves and for others as well. So we are adding that aspect, and of course the next lever is how do we use smart video analytics to be able to contextualize data beyond the connected sensors and other things. So it's also about leveraging video analytics to take it to the next level. So that's something which we are initiating.
Right, okay. One final thing I'd like to ask you before I hand back to Raj Kumar. Your job title, Chief Transformation Officer, I would say that's still quite an unusual job position in industry. How did this come about for you?
So I think this had come up whilst we did one of our Lakshya project. We call it Lakshya. Lakshya, it's a Hindi term which says Lakshya is like a target. So we had a project which we did with E.T. Kearney. Now they are named by as Kearney. E.T. Kearney you would have heard.
Yeah.
They are UK based consulting, a renowned consulting organization. So we did one project with them, and which I had led the project. And whilst they were handing over, they wanted that for this project to be sustainable, they wanted to create a charter within the enterprise. And it was their recommendation that we carve out a position like this, the Chief Transformation Officer, who is entrusted to drive transformation initiatives within the enterprise in a very structured manner, and with due support and engagement with the top leadership.
Okay, that's interesting. I believe now we're actually close to running out of time. Raj Kumar, can I hand back to you?
Yeah, Bob, we have some questions here from our delegates. Yeah, Madhusudan is asking any recommendation on techniques.
Any recommendation on techniques of deploying IoT? As I mentioned, we have these levers which I spoke about on first identifying that what is the problem statement we are trying to solve. So first of all, whether you look for optimizing your plant performance, or you are looking at enabling remote operations, or you are maintenance, wherein is an issue wherein you are facing a lot of these downtime issues. So that is one, is identifying the broad theme which you look at, which you are targeting. And then when you talk about how do you solve these or address these techniques, as I mentioned, so you'll have to look at, is the data already available in some shape and form? Is it digitally enabled already? If it is digitally enabled and data is available digitally, is it communicable to an external source, to a different platform? How can you do it safely, securely? Okay, what parameters you need to transmit, at what frequency? Do you want to do it on-prem, or you want to do it on cloud? You need to take a call on that. And then, of course, identifying the right KPIs and the right stakeholders who would like to see that data and to be able to take decisions based on that. I think that is the broad theme. And then, of course, in each of these aspects, you need to look at who all could be the best solution or products providers, and then take a techno-commercial call to initiate your journey.
One more question from Neeraj Shah. How did you choose the IoT platform, whether it was public cloud based or hosted in your own premises or private cloud?
So as I mentioned, for the energy one and for the maintenance one, we chose a public cloud platform. But for the smart connected factory, because we are also into specialty chemicals and some IP issues were there, we chose to do it on-prem. And while we chose the platform, as I had mentioned, we chose a platform wherein one is looking at the data collection requirement. We chose the OPC thing, wherein we chose Kepware for the OPC platform. And then on top of Kepware, we chose Splunk. And while we were choosing Splunk, we had other options as well. And we looked at the ease of setup, whether it was meeting the business requirement, how easy it was to use, and the ease of support, and whether it is scalable and provides that secure environment. And then, but then you have other options. We chose Splunk, but you could have gone with Grafana, which also supports visualization features like graph, histogram, table, heat maps. So there are other solutions as well, but this is why, as I said, we chose Splunk as the platform. And then we had to identify that no, which dashboards and dashboard ultimately is what it's actually a user interface which helps you organize and present information is in a way which is easy to comprehend and then organize data and only consolidate that relevant information in a single panel. So that's what we did here. Yeah.
Yeah, we have one final last question. How do we uncover latest challenges and needs?
Can you repeat that? How do we uncover?
How do we uncover latent challenges or needs?
So I think, as I said, if you have a view, if suppose you are from the IT field, okay, assuming that no, you are from IT, okay, then only you may say that the needs are latent, because if you are part of operations or maintenance, you already know that these issues exist. But if you are from IT or maybe perhaps from OT side, then you may say that no, there are these latent needs which are not crystallized still so far. In that sense, in that situation, it's always good to look at logbooks, to look at historical data in the company's ERP, that what is happening, what is the data, historical data telling, and then based on the data, historical data, you can create some kind of a view for your seniors, or you can take a call that no, I have been able to analyze these data points, and using these data points, I realize that no, whether we have a problem in asset utilization because our design production data is so much. I know of companies who are running 3 shifts to produce as much as they could have produced in 2 shifts itself. By if you were to look at from the design standpoint, they could have run their whole operations in 2 shifts only. But because of issues they are facing, because of downtime issues and various other problems which they face, which now they think is a normal thing. They have realized that this is normal. But then if you go back to the drawing board, look at those design numbers and see how they are running. You are running the plant, how optimized way you are running. You look at energy consumption parameters that know whether from a design versus actual, what is the variance, what is the gap, and then be able to advise your leaders, seniors that no, look, I find that no energy, we can optimize on the energy spend if we were to have a real-time view on the energy consumption. So likewise, no, you will be able to uncover, I would say, and showcase it in the right spirit, not as a complainant, but as a facilitator. That no, look, let's do. If we were to have this view more accurately and more timely, then there are these opportunities which we can uncover. So that's how I think, that's my view of doing things. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Rajneesh Osha has thanked you for your nice presentation, and
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Atul Govil, for the presentations.
Yeah.
So here we have an announcement from ARC Advisory Group. Our next Digital Council Asia event will be on 27 May 2021, and we have a regional forum scheduled online. We have a virtual forum Europe, which will be scheduled on May 18th and 19th, 2021. And we have made an Asia virtual forum from 13th to 15th July 2021. So you will be getting shortly the registration link, and request you all to attend our Asia forum. So we have combined one event. There is no any separate India or Japanese event. We have one Asia virtual forum combined all together. So we have completed our US forum in February 2021. If you wanted to log in and to view the presentations and the videos, you are welcome to log in and see, because for the next 3 months, it will be available on the website. So we thank our speaker, Atul Govil, Chief Transformation Officer, India Glycols, for participating in this DTC Asia event, creating business impact with industrial IoT. We also like to thank Bob Gill, General Manager, ARC Advisory Group, for topic introduction. We thank all the delegates who had joined the webinar and looking forward for your support on the upcoming events. Finally, we thank ARC Advisory Group India team for all the logistics support. Once again, we thank you all for participating in the event. Thank you. Thank you all.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.